All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for those that can join in real time, and we are recording, of course, for anyone who has to go back and watch. We have a couple guests today. Pete Flood, you met in person if you were here for the orientation. He's our one of the directors of solid waste here, and our topic today, if any questions come in that are a little tricky, he's here to sort of chime in and help me out. And then Rob Lush is on here already, yep, there he is. Hi. I was hoping to do the presentation, my part, and then at that funny little 2:20 time where I got to run and pick up Levi from school, have him talk a little bit about what he does. So we'll see how that goes on the timing. If not, that's okay. And let's see, Sue, since you've joined us for the first time, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Oh, you're muted still.
Yep. Sorry. Hi there, everyone. As Karen said, I'm originally from New Zealand, very passionate about recycling and trying to get as many people to become of the same mindset as me. Always interested. I travel to England around Christmas, and I'm always interested to see what other countries do. But I'm really enthusiastic about the pop-up drop-offs. I've only done one so far, and I had so much fun. It was so enjoyable. It's nice to get out to talk to people and answer their questions. So that's why I'm here today, and I will be doing as many this summer as I can. But hi, everybody. If anyone has any questions about being an ambassador, I'm not a very good example because my time seems to be so stretched, but I really am passionate about it. I believe in it, and I try to do everything I possibly can.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate you, all the little or enough, whatever, all the work that you've done. And that drop off that you did attend, we couldn't have done that without you and Suzanne. So yeah,
No,
glad
we
you
couldn't
were there.
I think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
I'll be there again next time for sure.
Awesome. I'm actually working on the schedule. The first 3 are official. I just haven't posted them yet. But there will be March 16th will be our first one, and that's at Fleet on Newburgh Road. That one's not usually as bad when it comes to traffic and things like that, but nonetheless, Sue, I will be sending that out. So I'll if you do want to come. I was actually working on, I didn't finish. I was trying to get a Sign Up Genius going so that, because we're getting into that time of year where we get calls and events are starting to get planned and put on the calendar. So I'll be sending some info. Those of you, when you're brand new, I haven't done that volunteer background thing yet, but I think I'll probably go ahead and get that started this week because it can take some time. But for example, the Paris Town Garden show on April 6th, they haven't started requesting people to table yet, but last year we did, and we had a little composting class. So that's one where there's a pop-up drop-off on the same day. So we'll be putting it out just to see if we can actually be in 2 places at once because we have volunteers. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and hopefully share my screen here. All right, so when I do this, all my screens change and I have a hard time watching. So if there's chats or something that I miss, I'm going to try to get that pulled up. Okay, now I can see it. All right, so here's a list of today's topics. The Waste Management District is one of them. So we're going to talk about what that means. I think we may have glossed over it at some point. Community host agreements, I just have a couple slides on that. The 5-year solid waste management plan is important. And the solid waste study that we have. I think you all have links from that resource page I gave you at orientation. I think you all have links to those, the solid waste study and the 5-year plan. And then the Clean Collaborative is the department or initiative that Rob Lush is over. So that'll be his part when he talks about what that means. And It Adds Up was a litter campaign that we did. So I was going to talk a little bit about that. And that one I can go into more detail or less detail depending on the time. So we'll see. All right. Let's see. Did I advance the slide? I'm like confused about my screen here.
No, it's still the same. Oh,
There
it
you go.
is.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know why PowerPoint, I have to, like, all 3 screens show PowerPoint. Okay, so the Waste Management District, this is the mission. It's kind of a lengthy sentence here, but I'll just go ahead and read it. The mission of the Louisville Jefferson County Metro Government Waste Management District is to develop and implement strategies, policies, and programs that will meet or exceed goals set in the state of Kentucky's Solid Waste Management 5-year plan. Create an awareness and commitment to waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and minimize adverse effects on public health, safety, and the environment while providing an efficient and cost-effective solid waste and recycling collection system for the current and future residents of Louisville, Jefferson County. Wow.
Wow.
That's a big statement here.
That's a Diane Moon sentence.
Yeah. So there's a lot in that. And I think as we go through what more of the details of that plan that we have and what the district has done and is working on, hopefully you can see this mission within all of that. Okay, so here's the part, the Waste District history. There's a slide about it. I was like 11 years old, so I have no idea when this happened, or I was not paying any attention to trash at that time. But it was created. It was designated. Jefferson County is our solid waste management planning area. Then the Waste Management District and 109 board was created. The 109 comes from the KRS that it's related to. So that's why if you ever hear us say the 109 board, we're talking about the Waste Districts board. And it delegated county-wide powers, duties, and authorities to the 109 board. So we, as Jefferson County, because it's big, and it's merged really, so it's Louisville, Jefferson County. It's our planning area, and in other parts of Kentucky, if you're familiar with any smaller counties or anything, they actually may have a solid waste management planning area that includes more counties than just one. But for us, of course, we are just our own because we're big enough for that. All right, so the Waste Management District is the designated waste authority in Louisville Metro. It's responsible for solid waste management planning. It's the authority to create regulations to further its mission. And it has enforcement powers over solid waste management. So that would be not just, a lot of times when we think about solid waste management, we think of individual level, but this is enforcement over licensed facilities and haulers and everything that has to do with solid waste management in the whole city. So some of the highlights that the Waste District did, one of them is that it was mandated that residents and businesses have garbage service. So I was kind of surprised when I learned that not every county has that law. So here in Jefferson County in Louisville, you actually are required by law to have garbage service. is just interesting to me. But yeah, so there's a law that you have to have garbage service. However, you are not required to have recycling service, but the waste haulers are required to offer it. And that goes for composting or yard waste service as well. So when occasionally we'll have, it happens more with businesses or like condos or apartments or something. They have maybe have a dumpster for trash, and they reach out saying, we, like a private hauler has the dumpster there, we'd like to add recycling. And they say, oh no, we don't do recycling. Well, I always tell people, if you hear that, you can just know right then and there that they're wrong, and they do have to offer recycling to them. So it can be interesting, but that's just kind of a good thing to know about the law. You got to have garbage service, but the hauler has to at least offer recycling. They can charge whatever they want, but you have an option. All right. Another thing they did was banned the landfilling of yard waste generated in Jefferson County to save landfill space. So there is, in the wording, I think there's I didn't look at it, but I think there's a Latin something about minimus. Like it's like a certain small amount is okay, but the idea is that you're not allowed to have a dumpster for yard waste and then take it to the landfill. That's not allowed. Then right along with that was banning the use of plastic bags for yard waste collection. So I was not on staff here when this took place, but from my understanding, there was a lot of yard waste collected in plastic bags, and our industrial composting facility couldn't really process that, and it was considered contamination. So in order to make sure that we could compost all of this yard waste and not landfill it, then we needed to just basically ban the use of plastic bags for that. So that went through, and that is still true today. So if you happen to see anyone that's bagging their yard waste in plastic bags and wondering why it's not being collected, that's why. It can't be in plastic bags. And then another one is, this is a negotiated a community host agreement with Waste Management of Kentucky, which restricts out of area waste from filling the landfill. So our current community host agreement is expired. So that's something we'll be working on in the very near future to get that updated. But that's a very important document that helps a city kind of maintain control of their landfill and make sure that it's not end up being filled up by use of other counties or nearby cities, and putting that city in a harder spot because of the fact that maybe their landfill is losing space. So it's an important document to have as in a solid waste management planning area. Any questions about any of that?
I have one question. The mandate for residents to have their own garbage service, is that, I think you mentioned it was Jefferson County, but is it just Jefferson County? Is there any surrounding counties that might also have that, or do you know?
I'm sure some of them are, but I don't know.
Okay. All right, I'll have to look it up then.
Like if you are close to Bullitt County, I mean, you could, I'm sure, look up in their ordinances.
Can we rephrase, can we get that question again?
Do other surrounding counties also have the mandate that residents and businesses have garbage service?
It is county to county. In some counties, though, they use what's called convenience centers, where having a organized collection system curbside isn't economically feasible. So a citizen would take their stuff periodically to one of these, basically a big compactor that is operated by the city, much like we use recycling drop-off sites, but this one is for trash. And I think people pay at that time, or they don't pay depending upon their county. So it does really.
Okay. we just at the forest, right on the border of Bullock County, and we have a lot of dumping that happens right along our road, right out in front, and we're pretty sure it's just some people from Bullock County who, I guess that maybe there's not a mandate that they have garbage pickup and they just dump it down the hill. So
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. And, you know, the state law does require that counties provide a collection system, but that collection system can include the convenience centers. So the law was, when it was created, was really created because there was so much illegal dumping everywhere out into the state, and these were very large dumps. So while we still have illegal dumping, and you know, out in the state, the law made a pretty big difference in cutting down on major sized over the hill, filling up a ravine type dump.
mhm. Sure.
All right, thanks for that question. So moving on to discuss the actual board a little bit. The 109 board is made up of 7 members, and there are the county is separated on a map into 3 areas that are, I guess, the old county commissioner districts. So we do have to have a member representing all 3 of those, then a member representing the urban services district, and then one from the home representing the home rule cities, and then another one representing the largest organization of waste industry businesses, and then the someone who lives in the unincorporated area. So we kind of talked we talked about that last week about the different areas of the county. So that way the board is made up of people that are from different areas of the county and representing you know, the different possible people that some of their mandates and things are going to affect. So so that's a good thing. And then there is an advisory committee to the 109 board, and that is made up of 15 members that range in representing industry, environmental groups, and then just citizens, interested citizens. So we have a representative from West Rock is on there, from Smith Creek, the composting, someone from the landfill, someone, we actually had one of our ambassadors from last year just was appointed as a committee member. So that's pretty exciting. And she's really involved in environmental groups other than ambassadors. But anyway, so that's on our website, all the names of the people and everything. So, and one member, I don't think she joined, but one of our new board members, her name is Alex, and she was interested in joining the ambassadors as well. So she's on our list, and I don't know if she can always join, but she'll at least watch the recordings, I believe. So anyway, that's our board. And this is a slide that Pete made that I told him I was going to use because it kind of helps understand the relationship between metro government and the board. So you can kind of see that the board on the left here oversees district funds and activities, the Waste District Board. And then there's Louisville Metro Government over here. And so the board's funds come from licenses and fees and grants, whereas the Metro Government funds are general funds, like from taxes. And then there's also the advisory committee listed there, and under government kind of shows that underneath the big government is our solid waste management services. But the executive director is the liaison between district and metro government. So that is Pete. And then there is a memorandum of agreement that between the district and Metro that details all of all that information about how it works and how the money can be spent. So that document, if you're interested in all of this, those KRS files and then the memorandum of agreement, all of this is on the Waste District website. So you can kind of see how everything relates and how the law is laid out with these things. So if you look again on the left and the right, there's district functions and then major SWIMS functions. So the biggest thing to remember is that the district is covering the entire city-county area. So when we are doing solid waste planning, it's countywide. There are full-service recycling centers and a household hazardous waste center that we've talked about. They are funded and staffed with district funds. There's facility licensing and compliance. That's considered district work to do that. Solid waste education, all of this that we do is community-wide. There's the community host agreement, litter abatement grants, illegal open dump grants, and then countywide recycling and diversion tracking. If you have questions about numbers on recycling and diversion, Pete is your guy. We have all kinds of spreadsheets about that. And then over here with the major SWIMS functions, you can kind of see there's collection in the Urban Services District that's done by our Metro collection staff and in the Central Business District. Dead animals, it doesn't mean they can only work in the Urban Services District. It just means that SWIMS is responsible for these functions. So like the dead animal reporting, that can be countywide. Street sweeping also goes outside of the Urban Services District. Enforcement, that can be anywhere, really. There's a lot of it is in the Urban Services District, but it can be outside. Unstaffed recycling drop-offs that we have, that's under the SWIMS funding and the Waste Reduction Center, and then any alley cutbacks that we end up doing. So are there any questions about that? This is a little blurb about that MOA. So it is a relationship between district and Louisville Metro government, and it shows the role of the executive director, required budgeting and spending controls, staffing and equipment sharing, and specific functions of the district. So again, that's just a document you can read through if you're interested. And there's another slide about funding. So when you have a facility where you're processing solid waste, you do have to have a license to do that. And the next slide actually talks about some fees that come along with that. If you're going to haul waste as a business, if you're going to sell those recycled materials, all of that. And then of course we get grants too, but all of that is how the district gets funding. They are held in the general fund of Louisville Metro. So that's part of that partnership. Even when we want to spend money, it kind of goes through Metro. But it requires, the KRS requires district funds held by another entity. They would have to only be used for waste district operations, of course. So, the city might hold that money in that department, but they can't just say, oh, we can spend it. So it is only for waste district operations. And then KRS allows funds generated by the waste district to carry forward. So we may not spend all the money in 1 year that's made, and there's rollover. And then here's a little bit about the fees that happen. You might, as a hauler, you may just have to pay an annual fee to be the hauler, have a license to operate, and then if you have a lot of vehicles, pay it toward that. But the facilities that are taking in trash, like the landfill or transfer stations, have to pay based on pay that percentage based on their gross receipts. And all that money goes to the district. Any questions about that? All righty, so one of the things, as mentioned, that the district does is the 5-year plan. And when I came on in 2017, we were about to have to implement the new 5-year plan in 2018. There was some things going on at that time that made that plan not really have any teeth, I guess. It didn't really say much. So for my history of this place, that 5-year plan, I don't know, it wasn't always thought as a guide because there wasn't really much in it. But now that we're 5 years later, as of 2023, actually, gosh, time just flies by. We started a new 5-year plan. So, which does have a lot more oomph, I guess. I don't even know what to say. But the main goal of the 5-year plan is to reduce the amount of solid waste disposed in the landfill. So it's as simple as that. And the plan itself, I think, like I said, I sent you a link, and it's a pretty in-depth document. You can read about our current systems and the strengths and weaknesses of those systems. And then there are specific actions that are listed to improve those systems. And then in that in that diagram, it's showing those different systems that it's all about. The collection system, recycling and reduction, disposal, enforcement, facility siting, open dumps and litter, and financial mechanisms. So all of that is part of this 5-year plan. Part of it, just sort of at the beginning of the document, you do have to determine the remaining landfill capacity for the next 5, 10, and 20 years. We have to have capacity assurance letters from disposal facilities. There's a time of updating disaster waste handling plans to reduce land disposal through reuse, waste reduction, and recycling, waste diversion calculation methods, and local determination for opening a solid waste management facility. So those are all other parts within this plan. So once, basically we spent months working with the advisory committee and the board to draft this plan. And Pete did tons of work on this. It was a huge thing toward the end of 2022. And it was there was a 30-day public notice and comment period. So you have to put it out there. And once it's done, and say, okay, public, here it is, give your input. And then there was a public hearing. And then if any changes had to be made, that was fine. But then the board officially approves it, and there's a resolution to adopt that plan. Then it gets sent to the state and approved by the state. So we have a 5-year plan that runs the years 2023, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 2027, I guess. All right, yes, there it is listed. All right, so the next several slides are actually some of the biggest parts to the plan. I do have a document that I can send that has the specific actions separated under categories. So we had separated them based on these subcommittees that we took the advisory committee, split them in half, made them subcommittees that could meet separately on more specific things. And one was called contracts and one was called education. So one of the documents that I have has all of these specific actions listed, and they're under either education or contracts, or there's this third that's either it's already done or it's being done through staff. So this is one of them that right now is currently in the discussion phase within our subcommittee, at the subcommittee level and advisory committee. So if you kind of read through there, it's referring to subscription-based collection that has multi-haulers, like multiple types, multiple hauling companies. So this one is, if you are familiar with the unincorporated area or know someone who lives there, and you know you have to subscribe to your trash just on your own. You get to choose, you get to pick the one you want, but that means maybe there's 5 different haulers on your street because everybody has chosen a different hauler. So the specific action in the plan is to use a consulting firm to gain information to find out if it is better to change this multi-hauler subscription-based collection to a single hauler contracted collection zones, which really is similar to how it works within like an HOA. If you kind of think about, maybe you're familiar with a neighborhood where you have to be part of the homeowners association, and the president of that, and their little board that they have maybe determines which hauler they want to use, but then every neighbor that lives in this area is part of with that hauler. And then only one hauler has to come through and they have a contract. So the idea is trying to find out if doing that within the unincorporated areas that don't currently have that already, if it would be beneficial. It's very controversial, and I think we've already had 3 meetings where we haven't really gotten anywhere. So that will continue on. And if you're interested in that idea, join in, please. You can, all of our district and advisory committee meetings, I didn't mention it before, but they're all public. So if you're interested in any of that, we can add you to the list and you can be notified. Right now, they are all virtual. Does anybody have any questions about that particular action? All right, so some of them are more about education and outreach, and that this one is that way. It is to create outreach and technical assistance programs for each waste sector that includes best practice guides or toolkits that focus on reducing waste, recycling, reducing contamination, right-sizing services, waste audits, capture rates, and all that good stuff. So this is quite general, but as we create programs that are educational or maybe outreach programs, we remember that these specific actions are in the plan and they help guide us in what we decide to do. Another is to create a roadmap to standardizing solid waste management messaging. This is another one we're kind of working on currently. It gets tricky, but we have, I think, 6 or 7 haulers that might collect waste within a residential area. Most of them take their material to West Rock Recycling here in Louisville. Rumpke takes their material, most of it, to Rumpke Recycling in Cincinnati. And their accepted items are slightly different, and we're just trying to get consistent messaging to all residents so that that's agreeable to anybody, any of the haulers that either haul the waste or recycling or the MRFs that sort it. We want it to all be approved and agreeable to them, but we want to work toward having consistent messages because, I mean, I think recycling can get confusing no matter what. But it's even worse when you have to think about where you live in Louisville as to people get even confused by the fact that they don't have recycling, maybe at their apartment, or they like, why do I have to pay extra? Other people don't have to pay extra. So everything is confusing. So we're just trying to work on standardizing some messaging. And it seems possible, but also a bigger job than you think. And the Recycling Partnership is a really great organization that works with cities. We've done some work with them and gotten some grants through them. So, and they have a great website if you are interested in just diving deeper into what cities can be doing. They actually, I will email this to you all, but I forget what it's called. They did like a state of recycling report, and then they just had a webinar yesterday or the day before where they kind of present it. So I did sign up for that and half listened, but they always send a recording, so it's real interesting.
Karen, can I ask a question? This is Jane.
Yes.
Um,
Hi.
I'm just curious in terms of the way, I know the consistency of the messaging sounds like a really great goal. What are we talking about with these different cities? I don't understand all these different classifications of cities, but how many of them are not really using the basic services that I consider part of my, city of Louisville waste management, recycling stuff?
So are you talking about the home rule cities and if they're recycling?
Yeah, I mean, like, whatever, Lake Forest. I remember going out there, my friend lives out there, and they don't have recycling.
Yeah.
Or they didn't. I don't, maybe they do by now. I don't know. But
Yeah.
how many cities, I'm assuming they're still using Louisville's waste management, meaning their garbage is hauled by the city, or is it something else?
No, if it's a small home rule city or even within the unincorporated or kind of in that area that is outside of our service area, but they maybe have a homeowners association, all of those, they're going to have a contract or subscribe individually to a private hauler. So Louisville Metro is offering, we offer garbage and recycling and yard waste, but that is, not everybody participates, but it is funded through the tax base. And then these other areas, they might, some of them do have recycling. And I know Pete turned on his camera, so I'm going to let him chime in.
Oh, it's okay. I think he was doing well. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that I guess like a home rule city would have that option within their contract. And I know I worked with Windy Hills, and sometimes I can't remember if they're cities or if they're neighborhoods, but the residents wanted recycling. So they worked with the hauler that they had and did a little pilot, and some really passionate neighbors got some things from me and went door to door and really tried to get people to want to recycle and utilize it so that they could prove to their leadership that, hey, this is going to be worth the little bit of extra cost that we have. So sometimes it takes something like that, but it is up to the leadership of that home rule city or HOA to offer that.
So how many of those kind of cities are I'm imagining Jefferson County and having the three services, I think you said now, is garbage, green stuff, and then recycling. How many of those cities are there separate little, fiefdoms that are not using the services that basically offered by Louisville Metro?
Do you want me to go, Karen?
Sure.
Yeah, so there's about 82 small cities and an unknown number of HOAs to us. And honestly, it really comes down to the tax system and what's included. And if you remember merger, which I'm not sure if you do,
Mm-hmm.
they really didn't change the tax structure. So people in the urban services district pay, I'm going to say somewhere in the neighborhood of 32 cents per $100 of property assessed property value. People in unincorporated areas are paying probably about 12 cents per $100 of assessed property value.
Okay.
People in the urban services district, that extra money goes towards certain services that are provided, which for us, that means within the urban services district includes garbage, trash, recycling, bulky pickup.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
When you get outside of that, they didn't have that tax base. So it was subscription. And except where there was a home rule city that decided to contract. So you have municipal collection, which is Louisville Metro's Urban Services District in the city of Shadwood, paid for through taxes and provided by city workers. Then you have contracted, which is the small cities and just has one hauler in an area. And then you have the subscription area where there really isn't a tax base for it, where the individual homeowner has to subscribe with an individual hauler. In that system, you have multiple haulers traversing the same street, sometimes up to five, to deliver the services. So municipal and contracted is definitely, in my mind, the most efficient because it's a single hauler system versus the subscription area where you can have 5 people traveling the same street
Yeah.
to pick up the waste.
Okay, thanks. It's very complicated.
It is. I will say that every consultant or person that comes in from outside of the county to help us look at our system, all of them feel like that Louisville's waste collection system is one of the more complicated ones out there. So take that for what it is. It does hinder, in my mind, us being able to get consistent messaging out.
Yes. And a lot of that with standardizing the messaging goes with recycling. But I mean, it can encompass any kind of solid waste management information. But for one, recycling, a lot of people, here you can't recycle this here, but you could there, and it can get really confusing. So, all right. Another one has to do with, this is another specific action, has more to do with construction and demolition material. So again, a lot of times these actions are hiring a consultant that can help us. And then this one, it's improving end-use markets for some big high-level materials like drywall, concrete, and shingles. With the idea that we really want to improve our construction and demolition recycling. This was worked on a little bit already. I think we got kind of, got a little, maybe, I don't know, we kind of had to stop, especially not so much for the drywall. I think when we move forward, it's going to focus more on drywall, but the concrete and shingles and trying to use more of that into, say, road construction. It got a little complex, and we had some experts in the room, let's say, and it's like there's just no good way of doing it and actually saving money or doing any good with it. So it's kind of a bummer, but it did get pushed pushed back for a little bit, but we have some good contacts with the Construction and Demolition Recycling Association that are willing to help. And so this is not completely off the table, but I think when we do go for it, it's going to be focusing more on drywall, because that seems like there may be an actual solution in place. And then I remember when we were finalizing this plan, we added in this little part about EV batteries, because of the fact that it's a very much up and coming thing to be able to have a city and become a leader in that. So that's within this action. This is another one that is in it's a specific action. It's kind of off into the staffed. I don't think it was under I don't remember if we put it under the contracts. But anyway, exploring the expansion of existing full service sites. That's like our 3 full service recycling drop-off locations, to accept additional materials like household hazardous waste, latex paint, electronics, and hard plastics. So basically taking what we already do and adding to it and giving people within the county a closer option for travel to get to a place like that. So yes, that one is under our work is being done elsewhere or complete. So it wasn't within a subcommittee. All right, this one is about performing capture rate studies to obtain baseline metrics for measuring the impacts of outreach campaigns and other efforts to boost recovery of materials for reuse and recycling. So I actually have a slide here in a couple minutes that explains what a capture rate study is, but it's a little bit different than a recycling audit. And I'll just put that off for a minute to, because I know I have a slide in here. I'm not sure why it's not next, but we'll get to it here in a second. All right, and then another one for education is creating illegal dumping education and outreach messaging. As we know, that is a huge issue. We had this idea to have the overarching goal of a campaign that focuses on putting waste in its place. And we've since also realized that a big campaign, it really is to get people to use their services that they already have. So, so that's some of our actions for education. And then also an anti-litter education and outreach messaging is in here. And that is, we actually do have a vendor that we work with. We did last year the It Adds Up campaign that I mentioned that I'll talk about at the end. And that vendor, the company is called Field Trip, if anybody's heard of them. And they are working with us to, we got funding this couple weeks ago, 1 week ago, from the board to do another messaging campaign. So we kind of needed that promise of funding to be able to continue working with them. And I hope that we can do that annually. So far, we've done it last year and now this year, and we have $100,000 to spend with them, plus $25,000 from a litter abatement grant that can be used toward education. So we'll be planning that in the near future. And then, as mentioned in a previous slide, we have that community host agreement, a legally binding contract made between landfill operators and communities in order to establish payments, services, and other perks that benefit the community in exchange for permission to operate the landfill. So that is part of the solid waste management plan, and having this community host agreement is very important, but ours is expired. So that is a big thing coming up with our advisory committee. There are some people on the advisory committee that can't really join in the meetings on that because of conflict of interest, but we will have some people and kind of form another a separate subcommittee that will work on the language within that so that we can get that up to date. Some of the elements here would be reserving capacity, guaranteed of disposal for our community, limits of waste coming into the community from elsewhere, restrictions on certain waste, and then agreeing on footprint. When we, hopefully, I'm not sure exactly when, but we're going to schedule that landfill tour with you guys. So soon enough. And that'll be, it's a really nice tour to be able to really see what's going on out there. I can't remember what, oh, I know. All right. So my capture rate study comes up within this little section. So I don't know if anybody has actually gone to this link of the solid waste study. The study itself was done before my time on staff. So I wasn't here when it was being done, when they were actually gathering data. And then it kind of sat on a shelf for a little while. And then it got released to the public in January of 2018. So the data is probably, I think, more toward like 2016, but we still kind of have 2018 on here because of the fact that's when it came out for everybody to see. So if you go to this page on our website, you can, number one, there's a video, and that was a webinar I did during 2020, back when we couldn't do much else besides record ourselves on camera. And Pete, mostly on this one, is sharing about the solid waste study. So that is watchable. You can just get more details. But then there's links. So there's the study itself. There's the, sorry, it's tiny on my screen. The executive summary. So if you want, a little snippet info. And then they looked at the waste characterization and then the solid waste management system. So it's very, very detailed. And then of course this is all of it. So there's a few appendices there. But the study itself at the top, that's more like the recommendations that they had. This got a little controversial too, because you kind of had to remember that these were recommendations. This was not the plan. This was not our 5-year solid waste plan. It was just what this consultant suggested that we do. We could take some of that information and make it into a plan. But again, it got very controversial. So I have a few charts from that I use sometimes in classes, depending on what I'm talking about. This one is waste characterization, the top 10 materials disposed. Remember the acronym MSW, municipal solid waste. So this is the trash. This is what was going to the landfill. And it is in tons, so it's by weight. But when you look at it, you can see at the top there is food waste. So I will often use this chart if I'm doing a class that is about maybe food waste reduction or composting or something like that, just to kind of show to people like, hey, this is a huge part of our trash. So here are some things that you can do to try to bring that down. Then, of course, you can see the other big one is cardboard, which is just sad because that's very easily recyclable, and craft paper. Textiles, that one's a little harder for people. Don't always like to donate things that they know aren't useful, but some of our donation centers will still recycle textiles that can't be sold. But anyway, you can just see that as far as the top 10 materials. So that's part of that study, was calculating how much of everything there was. And this chart is also interesting because it's the recoverability. So out of everything that was disposed in the landfill, here are the things that could have been recovered in blue here. The red, though, at the time, I'm not sure if much has changed since then, but at the time, the thing that was the not currently recoverable. In other words, there was nowhere else to put that except the landfill. So landfills, you know, they're very important. You got to have them. But, and then when you're trying to go, kind of hear the phrase zero waste, that is great. But, you know, you really have to kind of get in your head here that there are, unless you have a place for everything, it's hard to truly be zero waste. But you can strive toward like 100% of recoverable materials being kept out of the landfill. You know, that makes more sense, really. So you can kind of see some of the other things. Of course, compostable organics was the biggest chunk here. Fiber, which would be paper, containers, e-waste, household hazardous waste, or even they have this section, potential for donation. So perfectly good things that could have been donated or available for drop-off recycling elsewhere. So anyway, this is kind of what you're looking at. You want to try to get all this stuff out of the landfill because it didn't have to be there. Any questions? Feel free to chime in. All right, so this next slide, I mentioned the capture rate study. We actually have a RFP that went out. One consultant has bid on it, and we're kind of in the waiting period from Metro for us to have that RFP ready to start that relationship with the consultant that received the bid. But here's I can't wait to get the study and get some data, because it just sounds like it would really help guide education, because the idea is how much of recyclables are really going where they should. So this is why it's different from just a recycling rate, is because you're looking at the trash and the recycling. So you're not just kind of looking at recycling and that's it. You know that there's 400, like this is a little chart. So we've got 800 pounds of recyclables and 1,200 pounds of other, and that leaves you 2,000 pounds total. But 400 pounds of recyclables are going into the recycling out of 800 pounds of recyclables. So the capture rate is 50%. So you're basically trying to figure out, look at everything and find out, okay, how much of the recycling was actually in the trash? Whereas a lot of times when you're looking at recycling rates, you're not really looking at the trash. So you got to look at all of it and figure out how much is really there. So how much is getting captured?
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is that because people don't realize there is stuff they're putting in the trash could be recycled?
I don't know. It could be a capacity issue. You know, if someone, so it could be they don't know, it could be they just don't care and they're not really paying attention. It could be that they ran out of room, so a bunch of stuff went into the trash. But our example, so the Recycling Partnership has worked with some cities on capture rate studies before and then used that for targeted education. And the one that stuck out in my mind was Denver. I think they expected, help me remember, but I feel like they expected to see for cardboard to be the issue. That was kind of their theory. Like, oh, we see a lot of cardboard in the trash, and this is probably going to show that not all the cardboard was captured. But what they found was aluminum cans, that a lot of those, that was a very low capture rate for aluminum cans. So they ended up doing some education around that, which seems surprising, but that's what the data showed. Pete, do you have anything you want to say about capture rates?
I missed part of it, but Yeah, I think what you said there at the end, I think it was Denver that you was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big surprise that aluminum cans was the one that was not getting captured very well. And just think, probably of all the valuable commodities within recycling stream, aluminum is one of them. So by capturing more of those aluminum cans, not only are you recycling more, but you're also increasing the value of your recyclables and potentially reducing or offsetting your collection costs more. So recycling isn't free, which is a big thing. The collection cost and the processing costs are significant. Sometimes it's just taking the commodity price, the revenue, and offsetting some of those collection and processing costs.
I have a question, Pete. When we do our capture rate study, are we going to be looking at households that participate in recycling, or would it be a mix, or do we know yet?
It will be, it's designed to capture people that recycle and have trash. So we're going to see how well they are doing at recycling. So what are we missing? And
Yeah,
then
that's
we're
what I
going
was
to
thinking.
look at some households as kind of a control to see how much recyclables they have going into their trash. So we can theoretically figure out what our recycling rate would be if we captured everything. So there you go.
Yep, so that's coming hopefully soon. I don't know, we're kind of waiting on the Department of Metro that takes care of all of the RFPs. We're waiting on them to initiate the meeting with our consultant that we got. So that's exciting, and I look forward to it because I know data is really helpful when, with education and knowing what to talk about. So, and a lot of times it's really good to focus on one little thing for people to really learn this one thing. So we'll see what we learn with that study. And then part of the solid waste study that was done did have this chart, which is capture rate of targeted materials in residential curbside programs. So with that idea in mind of a capture rate study, the yard waste, so that means that the other part of whatever 38% of yard waste is being lost to trash. Same, with the plastic down there, 80% or whatever, 85% is being lost to, or I guess that's closer to 75% being lost to trash. So if we did a capture rate study, we're going to see data like this, and whatever's real low, that helps you understand, like, oh, maybe we should be targeting some education toward a commodity. But we'll get it. I want to make sure that it's more detailed. This is kind of general, but. And I'm not going to really, this is tiny and it's just part of that study, so I'm not going to really focus on it. But just so you know, if you went into this study and looked at some of these charts, this is the detailed waste composition of all of the municipal solid waste. So remember, when it says MSW, it's talking about what went to the landfill. So you can see, oh, well, this stuff wasn't supposed to be there. And it was. So. And then we do sometimes focus on sectors. Like, for example, I already mentioned construction and demolition as, there's a specific action to try to capture more of that material. And if you look at that, the C&D, they actually it's based in tons, and C&D is very heavy, but it is already the highest diverted sector. I guess because of how heavy it is, it's usually more cost effective to not take it to a landfill and maybe find different uses for it. Like if you're, breaking up a whole concrete something or other, and you're able to fill something else over here with it. So diverted, meaning diverted from the landfill. ICI is that industrial, commercial, institutional. And then there's self-haul, which has the worst. Pop-up drop-offs were kind of a solution to try to get that self-haul number up, because it's not, you kind of have to give the option for people or businesses even that haul their own waste. You got to give them places to actually be able to separate. And we had a time we were trying to get some of our transfer stations to offer more separated things, and I'm not even sure that was there were some meetings about that. I think we ended up having to start on the 5-year plan, and that sort of went away, but I don't know why. It just seemed like the hardest thing in the world to do, but we sure do it at the pop-up drop-off, and I think it's a great example of how we can divert material through self-haul. And then residential's not too good either, so you can kind of see the rates here. And this chart is short-term, long-term. This was, of course, part of that solid waste study and recommendations. So again, there was nothing in here that was like, we are going to do this because this says it. It's just a plan, it's suggestions. But you can see the main goal up here at the top is 90 by 90 in 2042. And that is explained that what we would love to see is 90% participation and 90% diversion of recoverable materials. So remember, the chunk that has nowhere else to go but the landfill, we're not even talking about that. 90% of the other stuff. That would be like an all-time goal. But you can see this started in 2016. There's like a 10-year checkpoint. And it's kind of weird to think how close we are to all of these years. But there's some listed things that would be programs and strategies to get us there. So it's a great thing to look at, and it's a great guide, but a lot of it can be very controversial. All right, oh my gosh, there we go. Like I cannot find all the buttons. Okay, any other discussion about any of that? I feel like it's boring, but it gives you a good base, especially when you talk to people a lot of times. Well, I think it goes for any subject. When you don't know about it, then you think things are very simple, and from the outside looking in, it can often not seem all that complicated. But it's important to realize the complexity of solid waste in Louisville. And sometimes when I talk to groups, especially like, for example, the Sierra Club of Louisville, I spoke to them. I like to give them some information about what we're doing or what we've done. And it's not just tooting our own horn, but it's also just showing this. There's a lot that's being done behind the scenes, and you don't always see it, you don't always realize it, and you can sit back and complain about how dirty the city is, but there's work being done. Actually, that came up in a conversation today with Pete. Just, people that look out their door and just look at the ground. It's dirty. That means the city isn't doing anything. That's not true. So all that actually leads right into Rob. I stopped sharing in case Rob had some slides. And
Yeah,
he's going to talk.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say, I've got some slides. We're going to bounce around. I tried to put together a presentation. I just didn't have time today to do it all. So we'll bounce around from the slide to website and other stuff. So
that works. Thank you. Sorry. I know I didn't give him a whole lot of time. So
no, that's fine. All right. So I'm Rob Lush. I'm with Louisville Metro Public Works. I'm the Clean Collaborative Coordinator. So what is Clean Collaborative? Well, prior to COVID, for example, we used to take out individuals from Dismiss Charities. Is anyone familiar with Dismiss? So they are essentially it's you say a halfway house for individuals that are coming up on getting out of the prison system. They help them with employment and so on. So we used to have them, we would take them out to collect litter. And then when COVID happened, well, that wasn't an option for us anymore. So we had to look at ways on how do we start collecting litter to continue to improve the cleanliness throughout Louisville Metro. So that's when we came up with Clean Collaborative in 2021. Just let me kind of pull something up. All right. Everybody see that? Okay. So what is Clean Collaborative? So like I said, we started in 2021. It is a crew Metro funded 12 positions with Louisville Metro Solid Waste. And then through the Louisville Waste Management District, we were able to eventually get 6 more positions. So we have a total of 18 individuals that go throughout Louisville Metro to collect litter. And that's 12 months, that's 12 months a year, 5 days a week they're out there. With Clean Collaborative, the collaborative part is it's not just us that's out there collecting litter. There are numerous organizations, but it's hard to find out what everyone is doing because it is so much that's happening. So some of the organizations that we work with, for example, is Brightside. Brightside is volunteer cleanups. They also do tree plantings, daffodil plantings. They have what they call bright sites. So some of the medians throughout Louisville Metro, you'll see kind of like a landscaped median where it's meant to beautify the neighborhood. Public Works, which is us. It's not just Louisville Metro Solid Waste. So you have the roads department. They're responsible for not just the potholes and paving and everything, but also the mowing along state and metro roadways. And that happens throughout the growing season. So anytime that they mow, their contractor goes out or their employees and they collect litter before they go out, before they actually mow it. KYTC, we know that litter is a huge issue on the interstate. So we partner with KYTC to try to find ways to improve that. So fortunately, what we're able to do with them is through Louisville Metro funding, we're able to pay for supplemental litter collection along the interstate. So essentially what KYTC does is they mow anywhere between 3 to 5 times a year. It depends on the budget that they're allocated that year. And, so that's happening typically May, August, September, whatever the case is. So there's not a lot that was getting done on the interstate in the wintertime. And when is litter the most visible for a lot of areas, which it's going to be wintertime. Everything's not off the trees. So you're seeing all the trash that's collected in the trees and the bushes. Even on the regular streets, people aren't mowing their grass, their yards, businesses aren't doing it. So you see more litter accumulate during that. So with KYTC, for example, this year, we were fortunate enough to utilize their contractor to collect litter in December and January as well. So as an example, last month in January, their contractor collected 3,400 bags of trash just from the interstates. And, unfortunately, a lot of those areas what they're cleaning, you can go back the very next day and it looks like it's never been touched, especially along the ramps. Codes and regulations, they have their vacant lot crews that are mowing vacant lots throughout Louisville Metro. They have graffiti abatement crews that are out there every day abating graffiti along the roadways, and Goodwill's another one. So Goodwill, they're another way crew. It's essentially they have received grants and funding through Louisville Metro to aid in the homeless population to help them get back on their feet. So what they do a bunch of different things for them. So for example, if the individual needs an ID, they help set them up with that, take them to it so they can get an identification. They need drug rehabilitation, they help them with that. But what they do for us is usually about twice a week, they'll go to certain areas where our crews aren't able to go to that quickly, and they'll remove trash and debris for us. They've been a huge help. I've relied on them a lot over the last couple of years, and they've always been there for us. So it's definitely a great partnership we have with them. So where do we focus? Central Business District, downtown. Downtown, our Clean Collaborative crew actually does not collect litter within the Central Business District. What you'll see is the ambassadors that are downtown. They're actually funded through the Louisville Downtown Partnership. I kind of drew a blank there for a second. Their ambassadors are out every day. They have hospitality ambassadors that are there to help people if they need, where do I go for the best Cuban sandwich? Whatever the case is, they're there to help them with that. But they also collect litter. We also fund an additional crew to go outside of their boundaries to collect litter. Major roadways, curbs, and shoulders. So our Clean Collaborative crew have scheduled routes of just under 1,100 miles of curb miles that they do every year. We try to do that at minimum 4 times a year. Last year, we were able to do it a little over 5 times. However, unfortunately, it is just 18 people. So we do focus mainly on major arterial roadways. So you're talking Dixie, Broadway, Outer Loop, those types of roadways. And the reason for that is I can't get into every neighborhood. So we try to do as best we can. Alley Action, about around the same time as Clean Collaborative, a program started called Alley Action. Their main focus was to do cutbacks in alleyways. So if you go to certain parts of the town, you'll drive through an alley and you can barely see down through it. And what happens when you get in a location like that? A lot of times you're gonna have a lot of illegal dumping. So the focus of Alley Action was to go through, trim back the trees, open it up so that you could be seen through there, and also clean up the alleys as they go through. Right-of-way mowing, as I mentioned, Louisville Metro Public Works, the roads department, they're responsible for the mowing on state and metro roadways. That's not within the interstate. KYTC contractor does the interstate. Street sweeping, we have crews that go through Louisville Metro employees that do the urban service district. And then we have a contractor that does outside of the urban service district. They also do the bike lanes as well. Vehicle accidents, I'm sure if any one of you goes out today to go to the grocery store, you're probably going to see a bumper lane on the side of the road. It's unfortunate, I think that there's a variety of reasons for that. One, it is ordinance that anytime a vehicle is in an accident and if it is towed, the towing company is responsible for removing that debris. So a lot of times they'll place it inside of the car before they haul it off. So they should place the bumper in the back seat before they pull off. A lot of times it doesn't happen. Also, what happens is hit and runs. Sometimes people won't have insurance and they'll just leave, so the police aren't involved, tow trucks aren't involved. So they're still leaving all that debris there. So we do our best to also go through and get that. And we receive that through Metro 311. So we are able to take service requests, so complaints. So if you were to see that at the intersection of Outer Loop and Preston, you see some vehicle debris, or just that intersection's heavily littered, you can contact 311. A lot of times what we'll do is if the complaint comes through this week, we'll end up servicing it next week because we try to plan our routes out about a week in advance. If it's a slow week in terms of service requests and we're able to get it that week, that's great, and we'll do our best to do it. Here's our website for Clean Collaborative. So we try to get out as much information as possible for this, because one of the things that we try to combat is people saying you only clean up Louisville before Derby. It's not the case. It's never been the case. But what people see is kind of an all hands on deck. So you're seeing more vehicles and maybe in a certain area. So that's what a lot of people are seeing. We're trying to get the message out that we do this every single day. I send out a weekly. Let me pull one of those up. I have it. Well, here's an example of what I send out to Metro council members, Metro 311, the mayor's office. I do a weekly route, what we did. So, for example, I'm working on all the routes we did last week. That will go out this week in an email. And I break it down. So how many miles they cleaned, how many bags they collected, tires, other items. So there's so much that's out there in terms of not just car debris. There's grocery carts, there's mattresses, everything. So we just lump that all into other items. I break it down by day and route, and what street they're on is, we'll have how many bags they collected. So for example, Watterson Trail from Taylorsville to Bardstown Road, they cleaned up 13 bags. On our website, we did an inventory of litter baskets throughout Louisville Metro. And as you can see, there are a lot that are out there. And it's a variety of different ones. So we did this inventory because if you're going to try to improve what you're doing, first you need to know what you are doing. So a lot of Louisville Metro Solid Waste services all the litter baskets within the urban service district. We are seeing if we can't start expanding out what that takes to try to improve the cleanliness throughout all of Louisville Metro. So, for example, we are starting Dixie Highway to see what it takes from us, and we'll start to expand out as best we can. But with this inventory, anybody can get on there and view it. We try to keep this as up to date as possible, but this was a big task to even do this inventory. It took us a few months because we had to pull people off their regular jobs to go out and try to help us out with this. So you should be able to click on it. It'll tell you it's outside the urban service district. If it's immobilized, so some litter baskets are able to be bolted down to the sidewalks, some aren't. And there on every one, there should be an image, so you can click on there and see what it looked like at that time. The issue with having an inventory like this is if it's not bolted and it's metal, a lot of times they disappear and we won't know about it. The liners that are inside of it, people will steal the liners or they'll catch the liners on fire. So there's a lot to it. It's that change with these litter baskets, but we try to keep it up to date as best as possible. Each symbol represents a different type of litter basket that's there. For example, the red square is going to be a metal square decorative one. If you click on a blue circle, it's going to be a metal circular. And that all matters because how we solid waste services it depends on what type it is. So if we have what we call a mushroom container, something like this, we know that we have to send one of our trucks with the sidearm out there to grab it and it'll empty it. No one has to touch it, physically touch it. However, with the metal ones, with the liners, we know that we have to send someone out there to actually grab the liners out and dump it out. Sometimes people will request litter baskets in a certain location. We have to explain to them that it may not be the best spot for one because sometimes litter baskets can cause more litter issues. For example, if they are in a more residential neighborhood, a lot of times those people will use it as their regular household trash can. And you can put one household trash bag in this and it's going to fill it up. And they get emptied once a week. And just because it's full doesn't mean people are going to stop using it. They'll put trash around it. They'll put trash on top of it. Then it's going to sit there for a week until someone goes out and services it. So sometimes just because it might sound like a good idea to have it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a best, going to be a good idea. It actually may make things worse. So where does our Clean Collaborative crew service? So we also have a map on here. Sometimes we're figuring out the map. Sometimes we have issues with it. We think we got it working all right now, but essentially you can go here and see if you want to know where Clean Collaborative cleans, it's on here. So if it's a green line, that's where our crew service. Like I said, we try to do that minimum 4 times a year. Last year, we were able to do 5. You can click on them. As long as the iPads are working that our crews are using to upload them, the app is working, they input how many bags of trash they collected there each time they go. So, for example, this section of Cane Run from Algonquin to Lion's Arms, the total of 139 bags have been picked up from there. So, other section of Greenbelt, 302 bags. We'll talk about like around Outer Loop, 325 bags have been collected from there. So this is a good tool just to show people where we do service. Now, like I said, just because a street or roadway is not on here doesn't mean that we won't clean it. If it's a complaint, call 311. There are some requirements that we have on it. It can't go past a half a mile stretch. Sometimes we'll get a complaint that says I'll speak to someone, they'll say, all of Broadway is trash. It needs to be cleaned up. Outside of the scheduled route, I can't have a crew because our complaints crew is just 2 people. So I can't have 2 people go through out there and do all of Broadway. What I'll ask is, okay, what intersection is best needed for it? And that's where we'll go from there. We try to track how much we're collecting throughout the year. That's one of the things with Clean Collaborative is find out what everyone's doing. I'm currently working on the 2023 report. I've got some of it. For example, the Clean Collaborative crew collected 15,680 trash bags last year, off of 5,230 or 5,554 miles. This is for 2022. So in that year, it was 19,000. When we talk about the interstate, like I said, they cleaned it 4 times, Metro funded. KYTC still does it during the growing season, but we paid for April, September, November, and December of 2022. And they collected over 16,000 trash bags off the interstate. We have the Louisville Downtown Partnership, like I mentioned, right side. So there's a lot of work that's going into cleaning the city. It's just unfortunately a lot of times there's some roadways that you can clean twice a day, every day, and you're still going to collect stuff. So we're working on it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep, that's got a question around that. That spreadsheet that you showed, similar to the one that's on the screen earlier. But I mean, is there? And I guess to your point, there's some roadways that we could clean twice or 3 times a day, even. But how can you show growth, or how can you show year over year or month over month that things are, quote, getting better? Or is that something that's not measured? Or would that be valuable? Or
yeah. So one of the things that we hope for is with tracking where we're collecting and how much, you can look at, well, okay, why is there so much trash along this section of roadway? You can look at it and say, okay, well, there's 3 convenience stores at this location. None of them have litter baskets in their parking lot. That's probably contributing a lot to the litter. And then you can start to target that certain area, through education or, finding out what that property owner is doing in terms of cleaning up. You can start to look at it year over year to see what is improving. Why are certain areas more heavily littered? Certain parts of town, you have more litter from pedestrians. Some you have it from industrial parks. Some you have it because they're leaving the garbage carts out in the alleyway. So litter, a lot of times people will think, well, litter is litter. It got there just because someone threw it. Yeah, in a way you can say that, but there's a little bit more to it on why or how it got there. This is just part of it to try to figure out, okay, where are we seeing the most issues and how can we fix that?
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions on that?
I think Sharon has her hand up. Is that?
I will lower it. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I do have a question. Sorry.
Yep.
What you say, X amount of trash bags were collected. How large are those trash bags? What's the gallon size?
Ours are 45-gallon trash bags, 45 or 65. We've kind of bounced back and forth to see what works best for the crews.
Okay.
And what did you want to say, Pete?
Yeah, the one thing I would add to answer the previous question was measuring the improvement of litter along roads is an extremely difficult thing. That is, the reason litter is there is for so many different reasons, but also the tools that we have also are all encompassed into one program. And it's so if the litter gets better, can we say it's all because of a litter education campaign? No. Can we say it's all because we've cleaned along the road more times? No. Can we say it's because citizens decided that they would take care of their own neighborhood? No, we don't. Can we say that it's based upon the number of litter reports that we get? No. So it's all measurements that you can do, and you try to come up with a trend and say, hey, it's going down, for whatever reason. But litter is a confounding thing that has been a difficult ever since I've been here. And it seemed to get worse during COVID. I think that there was a lot of restaurants that had shut down their eating space, so there was more takeout food. Litter along roadways tends to be a lot of takeout stuff. So that was part of that. But it also has to do with people overflowing their garbage carts because they were home more. And so when that happens, overflowing garbage carts get into by animals, which spread litter. So that's what Rob was saying. It's not always the person that's just throwing it out their window. It gets there from so many different avenues. So you have to attack it from so many different avenues. It's just tough, frustrating. Sorry, Rob.
See that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. It unfortunately one of the issues that I see a lot is honestly, it's just hard to get people to, I guess, have pride in where they're at. And just, I tell people I have to, unfortunately, I have to collect anytime I go and take my trash out, check my mail, whatever the case is. I have to pick up 4 or 5 pieces of trash in my yard. So, and when you talk to people like that, they say, well, that trash isn't there because of me, so I'm not going to get it. And what I try to get people to understand is, while it's unfortunate that it's there, and I understand that you didn't put it there, you're not responsible for it ending up there, but it is where you live at. If we can get that pride in there, I think that'll help a lot. But it's just, there's so many reasons why litter shows up that it's hard to say what exactly works when you're trying to improve it, to lessen it. It just all depends on the area and in general why trash is showing up there.
I do hope to, with our next litter campaign, which I'm going to talk a little bit about before we go here today, but I want to put out some kind of survey, and we have one drafted. There's some tweaks I already know I want to make, and I kind of wanted to get it as good as possible before sending it to a lot of people. But ambassadors, I think, would be a great group to send this to get feedback before it's public. Take the survey, tell me how long it takes you to do it, and also any questions that just seem off or something like that. So I'll definitely incorporate you all into this. But I think it would be great to have a baseline. We didn't do it before our last It Adds Up campaign, but I feel like it's time. I think it's hard to commit to doing a survey because you sometimes get worried, like, what's the point? Is it going to be worthwhile? But I'm kind of at the point where I want to just do it, see what we get, and then we have some data. I mean, we already know people are going to say that our city's a mess and that litter is a problem. We know it is. But if we can have some good questions that could later, if we keep tackling it in all these different ways, including public messaging campaigns, to see if that perception can change. It's not really measuring the litter because it's really hard to measure that. But I think measuring perception is really important to know, like, people think this way now, but maybe we can change that mindset. And even changing a mindset of people can help get it cleaner, because maybe some people will clean up more around their house, or maybe some people will be more conscientious of how the different ways that litter comes about. So hopefully that will be beneficial for us. But I think soon I'm going to be working on that. So hopefully at some point I'll send you all a link to a survey and you all can just kind of take it and see what you think. Thank you so much, Rob. Did anybody have any other questions for Rob? All right, so I'm going to pull up this just for the last few minutes here, this is not on a PowerPoint, this is a PDF. Does everybody see that? Or are you seeing a PowerPoint? Oh gosh. Do you see a picture or a black screen with words?
Black screen with words.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because my PowerPoint is sort of showing on another screen still. Okay, so we've been working with Field Trip, like I said, and that's a company, and we worked with them. They did a lot of information gathering by talking to us. They went on ride-alongs with our recycling crews. They went out and took pictures of litter, and you know, they've really learned a lot in order to help create a campaign. And the one that we did was this, we call it It Adds Up. And they created these posters that some neighborhoods we added their name, like Shawnee, Beachmont. Every piece makes a difference. We added a QR code that went to like a learn more kind of thing. A little bit like call to action, but it was mostly just learning a little bit more with some tips and then a link to contact us. And you know, I don't think I ever counted, Rob, how many people contacted us, but Rob kind of took that on and called or responded to anybody that wanted to know more or wanted to share something about litter. So this sort of describes the design strategy that they did for us. We had digital displays that were ads. We had social displays for Facebook and Instagram, outdoor boards, and then bus shelters. And then, of course, that was part of the cost is purchasing this media to go out. We gave them some zip codes where litter is more common, more of a problem, so that we could really target certain areas. This campaign was very much about awareness, not so much about, you know, trying to solve any problems or educate everybody. Just be aware that, and I really liked their message because there's kind of this idea that it adds up when you litter, but it also adds up when you pick up a piece of litter. So I really liked that dual message that it had. So this one message that came up, their phrase was, "It's not hard to not litter." And they also, I just changed it. If you see on where it says message 2, when you see it, pick it up. So they really didn't end up seeing a big difference, but they ran 2 different messages and monitored their clicks to see if one kind of did better than the other. I don't think it was a huge difference, but when you look at where it says benchmark, the CTR stands for click-through rate, and you're looking for your click-through rate to hit somewhere in that percentage. And for us, it did. So we, same for this one. So we felt pretty good about our metrics on these things. This was the native display. So it's just these different ways that ads come up when you're online. But our benchmarks were hitting. We also had streaming audio. There were 2 ads, 30-second and a 15-second ad that came through on Spotify and iHeart. So if you were listening and you had to get an ad, you can, I think, skip through it, but they calculate an average completion rate. And we had, the goal was 88 to 90% completion rate, and we had 94% on the 15-second and 92% on the 30-second audio. So those were good results as well. Then there's social media, looking at impressions. I don't know, some of this ends up being Greek to me, but according to our experts, we did pretty good on all of our metrics. We had bus shelters with posters, and I guess they do impressions based on, I guess, average drive-by, but these are the places where we had it. I don't know if anybody ever noticed any of our It Adds Up campaign. Outdoor boards, of course, they they kind of click through the digital ones, you know, can change, but we had a few of those. And then we had our website, which of course we did drive traffic to at the time we had a district website through Wix, and that's where the traffic went. And users spend an average of 4 minutes on the site. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead. This is kind of just showing that this was their presentation. Now, we already got a idea for their new idea, but we had to get funding before they would give us any more. So this was a refresher on some things about audience, which I won't go into today. But their next idea that hopefully we're going to be meeting with them in a couple of weeks is called Clean Together. And we have this idea of having real people. Hopefully we get some people that are willing, but real people in our ads and sharing, you know, what they do, how long they've worked here, whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be Metro employees. It can be maybe some well-known people in neighborhoods, or Brightside employees, or even private hauling employees, just depending on where we want to put these billboards and stuff. So anyway, it has a similar color scheme, but it's just a new message that we hope will kind of drive that idea that I was talking about perception. And just, you know, a lot of people think that we aren't doing anything. They think that it's the city's problem and the city's the only one responsible. So this idea of Clean Together is kind of putting it out there like, hey, we're here, we're real people. We really want, if you know, we're going to keep doing our job, but if you can help us out a little bit, that would be great. And we can make Louisville clean together. So I don't know what will come of it, but that's going to be our next project when it comes to, oh, sorry, Vaughn, you said to go back to the CTR slide and I didn't see it. If you have the ability, Vaughn, to tell me what you wanted to see. Where was that? One of these, like the native display. I need to open my thing back up. Oh, yeah, you can rewatch. All right. So, sorry, I'm terrible about watching the chat while I'm talking. All righty. So I'm going to stop that. And all right, any other thoughts on litter or the Clean Collaborative or these campaigns or ideas or anything you want to share? All right. Well, Autumn, go ahead.
I have a question about going back a little bit. Whenever
okay.
you were talking about the your 5-year plan and like those actions, one of the actions was about the multi company hauling versus just single company. And I was just wondering, because you said there was like a lot of controversy, what is the biggest argument against doing just a single company?
Well, it's interesting that you say the biggest argument, because I do feel like sometimes it's put out like what gets said isn't always the actual reason behind saying it, but it is the National Waste and Recycling Association has representatives from private haulers, and our state chapter, it has a chairperson or whatever their term is, that's part of our board. And so and other people too have been part of advisory committee or just very involved. And there's been actual letters, like the NWRA wrote a letter, kind of saying they didn't like some of the wording in our draft RFP. To me, it sounded like the hauling industry didn't want to be that didn't want anything in the RFP to make the hauling industry look bad. That's one thing. Because we can use words like inefficient, you know, when we say that there's 5 haulers going down one street, that's inefficient. We are
Right.
not actually saying that the hauler themselves is inefficient. It's just that the system could use some improvement. The other thing that gets brought up sometimes has to do with choice, saying that residents and people of Jefferson County want choice. So therefore, that must mean they would rather have their own subscription and get to choose what hauler they want, rather than to be told they're part of this contract.
Yeah.
There's lots of arguments against that too. And Pete turned on his camera, so go ahead, Pete.
I think you've done well, unless there's any follow-up question.
No, I was just wondering what that was. If it was like, I didn't know if it was mainly an argument from the hauling company specifically, or if it was, you know, general. Yeah, I get that could, both of those could come up. So
Yeah, and in speaking about it to residents, I've never heard anybody not like the idea. You know, people who
Right.
live on a street that have 5 trucks coming through, somebody every day different is getting their garbage picked up. I've never heard anybody say that they like that better than what it could be
and
like.
I can see where they'd be looking at for price, but it's not something that people, I don't know, it doesn't seem like something people really care and think about all that much. Like that choice is not that core, I would think, but
Yeah.
maybe it is.
I always
That's
say
what-
what people really want is the cheapest plus good services, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the idea of standardizing the cost of services throughout the county, because if you really start looking at it, it fluctuates wherever you live. You know, if you do have to call and subscribe, you would call and probably get 5 different prices with different levels of service. I know my parents went through that a few years ago
Yep.
when they moved, and
Mhm.
you know, they just picked what they thought was the cheapest and also the services they wanted. So,
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Greg, did you have something? Oh, are you muted? Or, yep, you're muted. Or he's walking with his camera on. I'm not sure. I was trying to see.
All right,
Oh, there you
can
are.
you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. What's going
All
on?
right. I had a question on the municipal solid waste that you were talking about earlier to the landfill. Do you know the percentage of what municipal solid waste is for the landfill? I know it used to be, having retired from MSD, that they used to be the largest contributor, and I didn't see biosolids in that slide about municipal solid waste at all. Just curious.
Go ahead,
So,
Pete.
so you're looking for whether the biosolids are a part of what's tracked that goes to the landfill. Is that
Pete, you got kind of quiet for me.
okay?
There you are.
Because I'm searching for an answer. Honestly, if you look at the all-encompassing waste composition part of that study, it does have sewage as part of that. What percentage of that, I don't know. Did you all look at a slide that had listed every material and the percentage and weight?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so really what the study does is as trucks come in, it pulls them off, it classifies them into sectors, and then it pulls many samples from the truck. They separate all those things and they get a percentage. Then they take and they multiply that by the total tons, or divide that by the total tons that are handled for disposal in Jefferson County. And that's when they come up with a percentage for each one. So it's not a perfect science, but it is a very good educated guess. So offhand, if you don't have that slide, Karen.
I do. We'll see if it's the one you're thinking of.
Detailed waste collections in Louisville Metro. So do you see sewage on there?
Mm-mm.
Okay. It may be in one of the categories there because they took the different waste streams and kind of
Oh, hang on. Let's see. It looks like my slide cropped it.
oh,
Disposable diapers, sanitary products was on there. Ah. Other miscellaneous. Sorry,
It-
I'm sharing the presentation, but really I'm moving it on this slide.
yeah. I am pretty sure that it included the sewage. The sewage was actually a fairly minor percentage of what went out there in the grand scheme of things. I mean, if you're hauling that in a truck, it probably feels like a whole lot of material. But in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small percentage.
Okay. Thank
Mhm.
Oh, Logan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, mine is also related to, can you hear me okay?
You're a little quiet, but I'll try.
I'll try to talk louder. I'm in a little coffee shop right now. We talked earlier about the mandate for residents to have a garbage service. What are the barriers to having a free recycling service in Jefferson County that is through kind of like that is also mandated?
Well, I think part of what we'd like to see with the, well, first of all, it can't be free, but we would like to see contracts, if contracts are made, that is more of an opt-out thing rather than an opt-in situation that it is now. Or it's just all encompassing. So I think with contracts, you could do that a lot more cost effectively because you have this whole base of people, kind of like we do with taxes. Pete?
Yeah, we would love to have recycling be a part of all services that are rendered. If you had what we call bundled services, you could have it just as part of that. And like Karen said, people can opt out. There'll be some resistance to that because not all people believe that recycling is what they want to do. So I believe that bundling is probably the way to go once we can get there. There's also a thing called pay as you throw, which pay as you throw means that you pay based upon the amount of trash that you generate. And, it can be a different size container. So for some people, more like people like me that generate very little waste, my bill would be smaller than somebody that doesn't recycle at all. And they generate a lot of waste. So if you have pay as you throw, you have recycling and yard waste, but you pay based upon your waste generated. So that's the incentive for people to recycle more. That would be a very difficult thing to implement here. Although I think that it's a great program and works in other locations, but not a lot of cities across the country have been able to enact that. Unfortunately.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions? All righty. Well, we are here by email or phone or whatever. If you think of something or get questions because you're talking about what you're doing and maybe you get someone else asking you questions and you want to find out, that's fine. Just let us know. And we'd be happy to help. And it is 3 o'clock. So here we did it again, a full 2-hour class, and I'll be sharing the recording out tomorrow. We'll get it up there and get that out for everyone to either look at some parts that you needed to or watch if you couldn't come. But Thanks everyone for being here.